Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Ebert, can you come back to the podium, please, and just address the comments from the lone opposition citizen that came? That is why I had some reservations. So I want to be clear. This is a huge deal, city. And we had a lot of residents who voiced their concerns about this deal. Can you just please speak to that concern about, you spoke to the bonds, and thank you for addressing that. You spoke to the article that is out that has some misleading information, and thank you for addressing that. But could you please address the comment that was made for the record in regards to citizens not being clear on where we are with this deal? If you can shed some light for that, thank you.
Certainly, thank you, Vice President. I do believe the citizen was correct, in fact, that we went out and engaged the community back in 2019 and 2020 during our Richmond 300 master planning exercise. And a piece of that Richmond 300 was the area plan for the Greater Scots Addition. That sort of gave us what the land uses and what the community wanted. But I think her concern was that when we introduced these papers back on April 8th, about a month ago, that it may not be clear exactly why we made a sea change with the issuance of the bonds. And even though I gave, I think, a lengthy presentation at the Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting in April, I can go over that again with everybody so that it's a clear understanding. Originally, we had planned for the Diamond District CDA to issue the bonds for both the stadium. Again, the public infrastructure was going to always be paid for phase one by the city through our CIP, our capital improvement plan, as well as from land proceeds from the sale of phase one. We have, as we were trying to work through this through a very difficult time last year with inflation, with the Federal Reserve constantly raising interest rates, as well as an overall economy where lenders were starting to tighten their requirements for private lending, it became very clear to us that this was going to be a more difficult challenge for the CDA to issue unrated bonds. In addition to that, we were also finding it difficult for lenders in the private sector willing to lend if private development was also going to have a special assessment backstop, which was part of the original sale of the CDA bonds, meaning that the owners of the private development were responsible for paying any shortfalls if the tax revenues were not there in time for making the debt service payment on the stadium bond. So all of these were factors that we were working with throughout the 9 to 12 months that some people said we kind of went dark and weren't coming back out. We were obviously trying to keep the council informed through closed door sessions, but we were in heavy negotiations, quite frankly, in terms of how to move the project forward. When we reached out in February to our finance department and then to Davenport, our financial advisors, we asked them to take a fresh look at how we could do the financing. And that's how we were informed that we were actually taking a lot of risk that perhaps we didn't have to. The structure that's before you today is something that we didn't think we were going to be able to do, but our financial advisors who are here today, if you want to follow up with them, have advised us that it's still being, even though that it will be a city issued bond, general obligation bond, we are basing it on the revenues, the new incremental tax revenues that will be generated within the 67 acres and more specifically within phase one only. So this is not going to impact taking revenues away from the city that the city is already counting in its general fund and in its budget. And it's not taking away from any CIP projects, whether whether that's schools or any other facilities that we have planned. And I think that's very important that it's not impacting either of those. We have said that it does put some risk to it to issue these bonds, but that the climate is very well for us given what is happening around the Diamond District and all the development that's happening. And we believe that that risk is well tempered by everybody that wants to be in this area. I mentioned the other day that we did a traffic impact analysis, and we made sure that our consultants took into consideration not only the development that's going to happen on the 67 acres, but all of the development that's surrounding this on both sides of Arthur Ashe and Hermitage. And when the study came back, we found that less than 40% of the traffic impact was coming from the new development planned in phase 1 and phase 2 of the Diamond District. But it's such a healthy environment that the traffic impacts were actually from everything else that's going on. And I think that gives us assurance that this is not, with a hope and a whim that, the private sector will be able to build something here, but a lot of confidence that those new future incremental tax revenues will be there to pay back the bonds. So just want to give assurances again that this will not impact in terms of taking away tax revenue or CIP money. As a matter of fact, as you all know, we were pledging, I think it was about $23 million of existing and new fiscal year 25 CIP money, which is now available for use for the city to use for other capital needs.
Thank you for that. I just want to make it clear, because this is a huge deal, and all of council is not here tonight, and that's another concern of mine. I just want to be clear and make sure that the public understands why we are actually voting on this tonight as well. Can you just shed just a little light on why we have to vote on this tonight? Because of a law that was passed